Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Ryan, okay, we're talking about Panama, so that's the top of the episode. We're going to cover Panama in this episode. But before we get into that, I'm not having a good afternoon.
What happened?
I just don't understand this podcasting software platform that we're using. It's like it needs an update constantly, and every time we record it, it takes an hour and a half just to get the mics working.
This is an episode 159. You think you'd figure this out by now?
It didn't used to have this problem. And then 2 hours before we recorded, I checked for software updates. There were none. I even sent you a picture to verify it. And then we get on and I can't hear you. You can't hear me.
Well, I can hear you now. You can hear me now. The audience can hear us.
Are you trying to tell me this isn't fit for the audience, right?
I mean, I don't think it's that compelling.
I think that our regular listeners enjoy a peek behind the curtain. And, I want them to know the pain and effort that go into bringing this quality travel content out every other week.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. And, it's not inexpensive either. But, Ryan, it does give us a chance to be together. And this time, we're going to be talking about a fascinating sojourn that you recently made in Central America.
Well, it's not even that recent anymore because the year has flown by. But yeah, I spent Christmas and New Year's in Panama in beautiful...
That's not so far. Don't make it sound like it's not timely. I don't think Panama's changed much in the last 6 months.
Panama hasn't changed much since the fall of Noriega, which is a blessing and a curse. Hey, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Jean Laws, or Mrs. Laws, as I call her, since I've known her since I was 10 years old. And she is the mother of Mike Laws, who's my co-host over on Red Pen.
Oh, well, I didn't. Why are we always talking about this Red Pen?
She sent us a lovely email. She's a big fan of the pod, her and her husband, Vic.
Of our Vic. Pod?
Yeah,
not
this
the
pod.
Other one.
Well, that one too, I'm sure. But they've gotten into this pod. And so I just wanted to send them like a hello on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Thanks for listening. And, we'll try to keep it entertaining for you.
Thank you very much for listening. And while we're giving shout outs to listeners, we should say we're really appreciating seeing the suggestions for the trip that Ryan and I are going to take. We shifted the window. We're going to actually take it in November. Now, I know that might change people's recommendations. Ryan and I are going on our second ever trip together. We lived in New York. We explored New York together, some of the sites, day trips outside of New York. But this is an overnight trip. And we were looking for a destination that's within, I'd say, a 3 or 4 hour flight of New York and Boston. Could be nature, could be city. We're open to your suggestions, enjoying seeing the suggestions coming in, and some really odd ones in there, Ryan. But the best way to get them to us is outofofficepod@gmail.com, or you can drop them directly into the direct messages on Instagram, which is, of course, OOO podcast. That's podcast.
Ooh, podcast. And I posted some really fun stuff on the Insta from our New York episode. I will definitely post some Panama photos. I took plenty of great photos in Panama, so I'll do a photo dump of Panama on the day this comes out. So check out the Instagram, folks. And with that, Kiernan, I think it's time to take off.
Oh, my God. I can't wait.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. We are here in sunny. It is hot in Panama. Let me just tell you. It is
you always
warm,
do this thing. You do this thing.
Place.
It's just the name. We didn't actually fly there. We're not in Panama right now. You're just recounting.
No, I'm actually in Brooklyn.
Is it incredibly hot in Panama? I don't know.
It was really hot.
Yeah. I mean, it's really equatorial, right?
Yeah. And I bought my beloved Panama hat. And
but you didn't buy the Panama hat in Panama.
I bought one in Mexico and then it fell apart. And then I bought a real one in Panama.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And by a real one, I mean one made in Ecuador because Panama hats are made in Ecuador for whatever reason.
That's very odd.
It is very odd.
Describe a Panama hat for those who aren't familiar with that phrase.
It's just a simple sort of like dressy looking hat that's made out of, gosh, what is this made out of? It's like made out of a
sort of wicker.
Yeah, like a wicker.
And I don't think it's wicker.
Paja tequila is what it's made out of, whatever that is. And
well, you just hit a milestone on your Duolingo. They didn't teach you that?
No, they haven't taught me that yet. And it's got a little like a black felt little thing around it. It's lovely. I'll post a photo of me in it. I love it. I've only gotten to wear it once in New York. It was really, really hot and muggy one day.
Oh my God, you wore that in New York, Ryan?
I did. I wore it to the New York Historical Society.
I hope you're such a hipster.
I was really cool. Somebody,
such a nightmare.
The guard at the New York Historical Society was like, "That's a nice hat, man." So
he didn't mean that. He meant it sarcastically.
No, he didn't. He loved it. I could tell. He really liked it. Well, we're going to talk about Panama. We're largely going to talk about Panama City, which is the capital, the main city there in Panama, where we spent a lot of time. I was in Panama City for about 2 weeks. I think it's the kind of place that folks can go and spend a long weekend and really see everything. We were just sort of stationed there for the holiday and got to see pretty much everything. But it's a city that you could really spend a really active long weekend in.
Are you saying it's like a good 4-day? Is that what we're aiming for?
Yeah,
here?
I think it's a 4-day.
And what do you
one of those days would be
with?
Panama Canal, which we'll talk about.
Sure. I mean, I imagine the canal is most of the trip.
The canal is the thing. So Panama City is a big city. It's a population of about 2 million folks, with 1.5 million in the main metro area. It's a weird city. Like, the vibe is weird. It is like global in a way that other Latin American capitals are not, because you've got the Panama Canal. So you've got like finance, you've got travel, you've got shipping and bank, and just a bunch of different kind of industries there. So it's a very global city, which it gives it kind of like an unusual vibe. It's like it's definitely. It feels like you are not, you could be in a lot of different places. It's got like a very international vibe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. And I think it makes sense for the place that it's played in the history of the world. It is a crossroads.
It is.
It's a cross canal. I don't know how to say it. It's not a road.
No. And Panama City is located at the Pacific entrance of the Panama Canal. Of course, the Panama Canal wasn't always there. There was a railroad there before.
What?
But
it's not a natural formation.
It is not a natural formation.
I'm not to get ahead, Ryan, but we are going to have some Theodore Roosevelt in this.
We'll talk a little bit about Teddy.
Okay,
of course.
I mean, if there's a man who could pull off a Panama hat,
he popularized the Panama hat.
Is that right?
It is true.
God, you didn't lead with that. If you wanted me to actually be interested in some guard telling you that your hat looked good, tell me it's connected to TR.
He was a huge Teddy fan, I could tell. So it's a really old city. It's one of the oldest of the Latin American capitals. In fact, in 1671, it was famously attacked and looted by pirates, by the pirate Henry Morgan, actually.
Of Morgan's rum?
I think that's who they stole it. He didn't start Morgan's rum.
Captain Morgan.
Yeah, literally the Captain Morgan. So in 1671, he just burns the city to the ground, and they picked up the city and they rebuilt it in 1673, but like 5 miles in a different direction. So what's really interesting is that old town from 1671 has now become sort of like the hipster quarter of Panama City. It's called the Old Quarter, Casco Viejo, and it is where we stayed. Our hotel was, and my Airbnb was in the Old Quarter.
Just among the burned out ruins.
You joke, but there are so many burned out.
Are you serious? From 1671, they're still there?
Yeah, you've got all these extraordinary old buildings. The Society of Jesus, the Arco Chato, the Convent of Santo Domingo, all these old burned out buildings.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
They are really wild. So when you spend the day, and you should definitely spend a day walking around this neighborhood, you're going to see a lot of these old historic buildings that are some of them have been burned out. A couple have been renovated, but it's a real mix of beautiful old buildings and beautiful old buildings that are completely burned out, but still super cool and beautiful.
Let me just ask. So Panama at this time, in 1671, Panama would have been a colony of Spain, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And then who was Henry Morgan? Was he like a British pirate? I'm just gathering from the name.
I think he was like, pirates sort of like not state. They weren't state sponsored, right?
You think they were a bit stateless? No,
They were
the
stateless.
state-sponsored ones were privateers.
Exactly. Look at you.
Yeah. But I want to know, this Captain Morgan, was he a British man?
It's I don't want to, slander the Brits.
I'm going to the Wikipedia live here. We're going Henry Morgan pirate. That's going to be him. He's Welsh. Oh, but it does say Welsh privateer. I think, he became lieutenant governor of Jamaica. I mean, this guy was state sponsored.
This guy had a lot going on. He had
a lot going on. A big wig too. Big wig.
Well, so he plays into the very early history.
Did they call people big wigs because they wore big wigs? I never thought of that before.
Are you just getting this?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
So yeah, Henry Morgan, you're gonna see a lot about the pirates, and it's definitely something that the local guides and people like to talk about, especially in the Old Quarter. There are many very modern neighborhoods in Panama that feel just like you're in like a business district in like any major city. It's sort of like an unromance about a lot of that unwalkable kind of ness to the city outside of the Old Quarter. So that's why we really spent a lot of the time in the Old Quarter. We stayed at this hotel that was just opening called this Sofitel Legend. And what's really cool about this specific hotel, this beautiful hotel, was that it is in this building from 1917 that used to be Club Union. Now, Panama has a crazy history. One of the books that I read when I was in Panama was a book by Lawrence Wright, who we love,
of course,
about Noriega. And Noriega was the dictator of Panama for a really long time. And then in 1989, his regime collapsed. But Lawrence Wright wrote this really fascinating book called God's Favorite, which is sort of a novelization of Noriega's downfall. And so much of Noriega's Noriega was not well born. He was not born to be in the leadership class of Panama at the time. There was like a very strict hierarchy, and he became the dictator. But he was never allowed to do like all the things that a well-born citizen of Panama would be able to do. And one of those things was join the Union Club or Club Union. And he talks about it a lot in the book, and he feels very annoyed about not being able to join this club. And so they have since turned this club, where all like the elite of Panama used to hang out, into this beautiful hotel, the Sofitel Legend, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But it's a really wild story. The entire Noriega story is really wild. There are like things you can go to in the city kind of related to him. Obviously, he fell in 1989. That's not that long ago, which is really wild to think about. But the city has, certainly stabilized since then and just become like a real commercial center. One of the things I want to talk about in Casco Viejo, before we jump into restaurants, is this is the restaurant, but it's sort of a unique experience. It's called Cafe Coca-Cola.
Ryan, before we continue on, I do just want to stop and praise Duolingo here. They're not officially sponsoring the podcast, but you've hit Viejo very successfully several times now. There's no Viejo. I'm just very impressed, and I think for listeners who have followed your mastery of the Spanish language from episode 1 to today, it very much worth noting.
Well, thank you so much, Kieran. I appreciate it, and my Duolingo 300-day streak appreciates it as well.
So Cafe Coca-Cola.
Cafe Coca-Cola opens in 1875 and becomes this sort of unofficially named Coca-Cola Cafe. It's not connected to Coca-Cola. Later on, they become enemies and then friends with the brand. They're friends with the brand now, but they were enemies for a while. But they are allowed. They are the only place outside of Coca-Cola Company to be able to use the Coca-Cola trademark. So
do you know what was like the impetus for naming it this?
It was just people really, it was the U.S. and Panama had like have always had a very special relationship, and the Coca-Cola is really popular in Latin America, and they just, somebody just had the bright idea to name it the Coca-Cola Cafe. And this is a place where when you go and you eat, and it's like a diner, it is like a just totally chill diner. When you go here, you're eating in the same venue as where Evita and her husband have been to. Che was there. Fidel Castro ate there. So it is a historic, strange little diner. I had a lovely lunch there and some pretty good coffee.
You didn't drink a Coca-Cola?
I didn't drink a Coca-Cola, no. Although
do they sell Coca-Cola products?
They definitely sell Coca-Cola products.
And do they use the official Coca-Cola logo?
Oh, yeah.
It's insanity. I can't believe that Coke stands for this.
Coke has just given up on this fight. Like, there's going to be this cafe Coca-Cola that exists in Panama, and it's gonna just be there. And it's it's a very strange. It doesn't feel like 1875, but you could easily just film something there and say it's like 1956, and it would just feel totally fine.
All right, I'm shocked by your choice of beverage, but it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, Cafe Coca-Cola. A couple of the restaurants, it's a city with a lot of fancy hotel restaurants that are not notable. They're expensive and they're fancy, but they're not like, particularly notable. There's a Trump Tower where I ate at the restaurant there just for laughs. But in the actual sort of like serious food scene, there's only a real handful of places. So I'm going to give a couple shout outs, and we'll definitely put these in the show notes. So the first one I want to talk about is in the Old Quarter, the only one in the Old Quarter, and it's called Fonda Lo Que Hay. And I is spelled Hay because it's Spanish.
I'm just very impressed, Ryan.
Thank you. Fondas are a type of Panamanian restaurant, coffee bar. They are all over the and this one is sort of a reinvention. It's a young chef doing like classic Panamanian food, but in a super hip, buzzy atmosphere. And so there are no reservations here. We waited for close to 90 minutes, and I never wait for something that long. But it was just, the vibe was so much fun, and everybody was like having a really good time that I was just like, we're going to wait. And it was definitely worth it. It was probably one of my favorite meals we had in the whole trip. And it gives you a real chance to sort of like be in this buzzy, exciting atmosphere, super international crowd, and it's not expensive. It's pretty kind of low key, Panamanian food. So would definitely recommend that. Lots of local food. Check out the yucca fries. Those are really popular and are delicious.
That sounds really good.
A couple other ones I want to give a shout out to. There was a small, really intimate restaurant, sort of fine dining focus called Intimo. This one was more in the tourist district, but was a really lovely meal. It's been around for a while and is very respected. But a much quieter, relaxed atmosphere. The most acclaimed restaurant in the city, this is on the world's best list. It is definitely aiming for that fine dining vibe and doing that thing that Central in Lima does so well. And that's bringing all these like local ingredients and local cuisines into like a narrative story. So, not only are you enjoying your meal, you're learning about the geography and the kind of food that's grown and raised around Panama. Really high quality, huge place, big outdoor area, a lot of outdoors. They give good evenings in Panama. Really, like that's when it cools down and folks can kind of be out without sweating. So definitely
Never true for you or me,
No.
but for others, for normals.
Yeah, definitely. This one would be on my is the one to definitely eat at if you have one meal. It's the one to definitely eat at, but it is stuffier and fancier, and folks should be aware of that. The last one I want to shout out is Cantina del Tigre, and this was much similar to the very first one we talked about. It's super young, hip vibe, lots of really cool cocktails, local food. The walking in was like ridiculous. There were like these tigers growling and stuff, like recording of tigers growling in like the main room. So we didn't kind of know what to expect. But that if you get past that level of taste, the actual restaurant is really, really good, and the food is really good. And it is much more that more laid back kind of hip scene than the middle two. So 4 restaurants recommended, 2 that are more kind of low key and 2 that are more fine dining. But you'll definitely enjoy eating out in Panama.
Can I just ask, is there any I have just no sense of like what Panamanian food is like.
It's Colombian.
It's a lot like Colombian food.
Yeah, I mean, because Panama used to be part of Colombia.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, of course.
So it's got a very Colombian
and then very
vibes.
Seafood focused. Yeah,
lots of great seafood. It's they're really proud of the biodiversity in the country, considering how small the country is. It's super biodiverse because it literally borders 2 oceans. So there's a lot of different plants and animals and sea life that is produced there. And one of the cool ways to see that is at this museum called the Bio Museo. This was designed by Frank Gahey, who is very hip, obviously. It's a museum dedicated to the biodiversity of the region. I have to tell you, if I was, I was with Chase on this trip. We're 2 adults. The museum itself is kind of family focused. It's really bright. It's really colorful. If you're there without kids, you could feel free to skip this. But if you're a fan of like really unique and weird architecture, it is quite a sight to see. Just this really obscene, wild design. That is, I think, kind of more interesting than the museum itself. But the museum's got some really cool stuff in it, some great fish, some, it gives you an appreciation of how diverse the area is, and how crazy it is that they picked this area to complete this massive Panama Canal project that we're about to talk about. So that is the Bio Museo, and it's on a little peninsula called Amador. And Amador, if you go there, there's a couple of restaurants and stuff near the end, and it gives you like a really big view of downtown Panama. So a lot of folks will run that peninsula in the morning or bike it. It's a very long, narrow, man-made peninsula that is something to see. Even if you decide not to go inside the Bio Museo, you can go and outside of it, get some pictures and kind of look at the view. It's pretty cool.
It's a man-made peninsula?
Yes.
Oh boy,
there's a lot of
it's manipulating this country. It's very odd.
So we're going to jump into the Panama Canal, which is definitely the meat and potatoes of visiting Panama.
Oh, the meat and the yuca. Now, are you allowed to jump into the Panama Canal?
You are not.
Okay,
It is very expensive to go through the canal on a boat.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean you have to pay per all sorts of weight and all
per lock.
Yeah, per lock. I'm obsessed with the locks. So let me give folks some background. So one of the things that we did on the way to this trip was read this epic David McCullough history called The Path Between the Seas, the creation of the Panama Canal, 1870 to 1914. And this is like an 800-page, just epic book that details the selection of Panama as the place to build the canal, which is a huge bureaucratic challenge from many nations weighing in. The original and failed French effort which is in itself an incredible story. The second effort by the United States, which was successful, and the launch of the Panama Canal that is overshadowed by World War One. So it is as epic of a story as you can imagine. You've got Teddy Roosevelt as a character in this, but there are so many characters both on the French side and in the U.S. and the Panama side. There's a political intrigue of the coup that eventually takes Panama from Colombia and makes it an independent nation that we had nothing to do with. we had a little bit to do with. So there's so much history in this. It is just epic. And reading the book really made the experience of the canal tour that much richer, because I understood, how just the Herculean effort of digging this canal, of digging through the mountains, of moving all the dirt, the amount of people who worked on the canal, who perished, folks from all over the world who contributed to this project. Just an incredible, really something here. And I think you would love the book as a history nerd yourself. I think it sounds
transporting.
Yeah, it really is. Like, you can't imagine how interesting it can be to get really invested in, how many locks are they going to put in the Panama Canal? And you have, so that's the kind of detail you get. A terrific read. I wanted to link in the show notes to the tour we went on. It was called Barefoot Panama. They set up our tour of the canal. We met a bus locally that took us about 45 minutes to a boat. The boat takes us halfway down the canal through two different systems, lock systems, which was super awesome. And we got to hear a lot about the history, and it was just a beautiful day. And, there's really nothing bad about being on a boat out in the sun and enjoying yourself. So it was really, really, that is the highlight of the whole trip, was definitely, getting to go on that boat and getting to see the canal in action and get to go through two of the locks and just appreciate this insane thing that we did. And we did it so long ago. By we, I mean humanity, but that was 1900 is a long time ago to do this project. You can't believe how big the scale of this project was.
And any interesting Theodore Roosevelt artifacts or historic sites along the banks of the canal?
So in Casco Viejo in the old town, there are two things that are relevant to the canal that you're going to want to do either before you do the canal tour or after. The first is the Museo del Canal, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a really classy museum about the history of the canal, and that includes definitely a lot about Teddy's stop. Teddy's stop in Panama was massively important to get public support for the canal, to show people that it could be completed. He bet a lot of his presidency on the success of this project. It was not obvious that it would succeed. And, the amount of folks who died building it from disease and from other things, just unbelievable. So a lot of that is covered in the Museo del Canal.
It's a pretty good play for a presidency to be hooked on. Maybe if I ever run for office, I'm considering maybe it's going to be a canal instead of east to west, north to south, starting at the bottom of South America up through Canada. It's pretty big undertaking, wouldn't you say?
There are people talking about a second canal.
Oh, I didn't know that. Where would it go?
Because the boats have gotten so much bigger. There are a couple different places that it could go. And it's funny because they're revisiting some of the discussions that were 100 years ago about where this canal should go. And there's a lot of factors.
Is anyone standing at the Panama Canal just going, I don't know, how about over there? It's right. Or we just push this way out. The ships keep getting bigger, and so they've made improvements and additions to the canal. But at some point, we're just shipping so much junk around the world. These ships are getting work done, getting this big.
The other thing to see in Casco Viejo about the canal is a monument that the French built to their canal effort the Plaza de Francia. I like to say that the French built a monument to building a canal and the Americans built a canal.
Oh, do you like to say that, Ryan?
I do.
Who do you like to say that to?
Anybody who would listen to me in Panama. But yeah, I got my America First hat on. I was pretty proud of us.
No.
No.
We're trying to be middle of the road, but we're not going that way.
Well, either way, it did make you a little bit believe in American exceptionalism to be on that boat and see that canal. So one other thing I want to talk about that was outside of Panama City, because everything we just talked about there is really in the metro area. We took a little prop plane from this really small downtown airport, and we went to an island called Isla Colón. And this is a super small island. The only way to get there is by boat or by plane. And it has a little, town is like an extravagant word, but it's a little place with some restaurants and a lot of hotels. We stayed at like a White Lotus style hotel for a few days and just sort of hung out. But it was the most private beach that I've ever been on. Like to be on the island and to be on the beach and to look to your right and look to your left and there to be no people or houses anywhere. It's just a very, as somebody who grew up on the East Coast where like the beaches are just packed, it was a very unique experience. I enjoyed it very much.
And you had to take a little prop plane there.
Yeah, we took a prop plane. It was exciting. It was like,
was it scary? Was it very loud?
I mean, it was a prop plane Noriega took in 1989 for sure.
And how do you choose a prop plane to take you there?
Well, that's all there is. I mean,
sure, but like do you shop around or do you just say yes to the first prop plane pilot that says, "Hey, I'll take you to a beach"?
like 3 flights a day to this little place, and it's all the same Panamanian air.
Does the pilot? Oh, how many people are on the flight?
Oh, it's probably like 30.
Oh, all right. I was thinking like a little 5-person.
No, that would be exciting. I'm not that cool. No, this was like whatever the smallest possible commercial plane is that still has propellers and feels like, it's coming straight out of the 70s,
Well, when I was in Guatemala, there was an airline there that their whole business model was just they would sell as many tickets as they could, and then they would just call up that as many little planes as they needed to service that many customers. So Catherine,
it's like the Uber of
exactly. Catherine's like kind of a nervous flyer. And, there's probably 100 people on that had bought tickets to go to this national park, Tikal. And there was like one plane that pulled up and it was maybe like 50. And I was like, oh, I hope we're on that. And that flew off. Then one shows up and it's like 30. I'm like, oh, I really hope we're on that. And then we were on the third one, which is about 20 more people. And boy, those propellers were really close to our seats.
Yeah, that is, the noise is disconcerting too. It's like, that can't be the proper noise for a plane to make. But this is how planes worked for like a really long time.
Yeah, this is how planes are actually supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, Keenan, I think all this talk of prop planes means it's time for the last stop.
I'm not sure the connection there, but yes, Ryan, the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's why it's called The Last Stop. And it's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because this is the most democratic piece of the show, because we share with each other. We can share anything. It could be a memory. It could be a piece of gear. It could be a souvenir. It could be a tale. It could be a trip that you're planning or a recounting of a trip you recently took. But it must fit one criterion. It must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So, Ryan, I ask you, as I ask you every episode, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, Kieran. This podcast host, PJ Voigt, had a podcast called Reply All.
I used to listen to that. Sure. Didn't that get they got canceled?
PJ got canceled.
PJ got canceled, right?
Yeah. So PJ is back though. Pushing back against his cancellation. He has launched a new podcast called Search Engine, and in similar Reply All fashion, each week he's tackling a big question, something that he's been wondering, something that he wants
Why
to get
did
answered.
I get canceled? Who canceled me?
He was a
Should
jerk.
I not have done that? Things like that?
Exactly. This episode from July, and I've been catching up listening to them, and it's a really enjoyable little show. Episode from July is called "Wait, Should I Not Be Drinking Airplane Coffee?"
Interesting.
And he goes to investigate throughout the last 20 so years rumors about basically airline coffee and tea, and if people drink it or not. Do you drink airline coffee or tea?
I have. I'm trying to think. I think it's JetBlue that claims they have Dunkin' coffee, and that has opened me to trying.
Well, it's the water that people are worried about, not the brand of coffee.
Sure. I will say I as much as I
you're so Boston. You're like Dunkin'. You can brew that in anything.
I'll just eat the ground straight. I have to say, as I get older, I am a little bit of a coffee snob. So I have not drunk coffee on a plane except under great duress from tiredness in quite a while. But yes, I've occasionally had some hot coffee on a plane.
Well, he goes on a mission, and he talks to a lot of people, scientists and water quality experts, et cetera, and ultimately, not to spoil it, because you should listen to the episode, he comes out, he thinks it's okay to drink coffee from a...
What were people nervous about exactly?
Just like where the water comes from, and
it's just water,
right? How often they clean the tank?
Probably not too often.
Not too often, but it doesn't have to be cleaned that often. It's like how often you clean the tank in your home?
Hey, well, and at restaurants, they're certainly not cleaning out that equipment super often. I mean, of course, at Clover Food Lab, my employer, we are, but others.
Yeah. So, there most definitely there were regulations that came in the aughts that made the water cleaner and better. How much those regulations were needed, unclear, but you should feel pretty confident when you're on a plane in the U.S. at least that you can get have that coffee, have that cup of tea. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to hurt you. You're going to be okay.
Well, that's fascinating. And do you have any mixed feelings about supporting old canceled PJ?
I've always liked PJ, and he got canceled for being a jerk, which it's different than other
we've worked with a lot of people that should be canceled.
Exactly. Cutting that out. Did you
put a beep over it?
Yeah. Did you?
Let's put a beep over it.
All right. Did you bring a? Did you bring a last stop, Kieran? I don't see it here in the notes.
Yeah, the thing is, all the people who have worked with us know exactly who I said behind that beep. Anyway, yes, Ryan. Oh, I can't. I brought it last stop this week. I purposely didn't put it in the outline because I wanted to get the fresh, hot reaction that you're going to give. Listen, for the first time since pre-pandemic, I went to New York City. I made a grand return to New York from pre-pandemic. So that was my first time in 4 years. It's unbelievable to think. And went to what I thought was a stellar and really delicious restaurant called Cosme on East 21st Street. And it's a transplant. It's a Mexico City restaurant that has an outlet in New York City. Fine dining, very fancy. And I was very taken with the food. And when I texted you to say, hey, I just went to Cosme, you said, don't you know my Cosme rant? And I said, Don't say anything. Save it for the show. So, Ryan, what do you have against this wonderful restaurant?
I mean, so most of us New York City folks who spend a lot of time in Mexico City are really familiar with Cosme.
Sure.
It's Enrique Olivier's place, who is obviously one of the most famous Mexican chefs. He's a superstar. And I don't know, it's just overpriced, and it's very Polanco, Kieran. It's very Polanco.
So here's what I'll say: overpriced. I don't know. It was on the company. It was on the company this time, and we did a lot of shared plates among the table. Mm-hmm. Tried to be very responsible. Had a few mezcal based cocktails.
I'm sure.
And
you did.
There
you
was
like the mole?
I liked the mole very much. I thought it was deep.
He's a mole
and
expert.
delicious.
He's
I could taste it. I could taste it, and I think it was worth every penny. I think it was worth every penny. And but the thing that I loved the most, it was called a corn clayuda. Have you ever had a corn leuda? It's apparently a Oaxacan tortilla. It's like a fried tortilla that they do a bunch of toppings on, and it had kind of a corn puree with goat cheese and tomatoes. I talked about that on my Oaxaca episode. Oh yeah, I got to go back and listen to that episode. Well, I found it to be absolutely delicious. I feel like what you're kind of letting infect your view is you're not evaluating the quality of the food itself because you're spoiled because you go to Mexico City and you get all this amazing street food, and you know this food can be more accessible.
Look, I think he's a superstar. He knows how to market. Pujol is one of the most famous restaurants.
Sure, yes, I always rub it in my face. I didn't get into Pujol, and you did.
Well, you've been to Cosme, so that's how he makes people feel better.
I got the consolation. It's short for consolation. I think a Cosme consolation in Spanish, right?
I will say, though, if you want a little bit of a chiller atmosphere and you still want Enrique's food and vibe, he has another restaurant in NoHo, which is much more low key, called Atla, ATLA. And it's also Mexican, great bar menu, but just not as sceney. Kieran likes a scene, folks. He likes a scene, so he likes Cosme.
That's a terrific recommendation, Ryan. I'll put it on the list for New York next time. And by the way, I am sorry I didn't have enough time.
I cannot believe you come to New York.
I was booked.
I'm my neighborhood Cosme.
I promise you, it was booked. I was booked with colleagues from the second I got there to the second we left. So you would have been probably the second friend that I made time for if I had time, and I didn't see anybody.
The second friend.
I've got other friends, Ryan.
Wow.
You've got your other podcast you're moonlighting on. I'm joking. You're number one, Ryan. You would have been the first friend.
When I'm going to Boston, I'm seeing you. So
that's right. I can't wait. I just got coverage for the kids. I'm very excited for this.
Fantastic.
I got to pick do you want me to pick like a great restaurant for us to go to?
Make it happen. Yeah.
There's very good Peruvian
You literally wrote
here.
the book on Boston.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because guess what? I'm like really close to finishing the first draft of Secret Boston.
This is exciting.
Like within 2 weeks.
I cannot wait to read it when it's published.
I'll give you a preview copy, Ryan. And also, while you're here, I'm going to take you to all 125 sites. So
I'm excited.
It's going to be a long night.
Paul Revere has a lot of different things you can go see, folks.
Well, I really liked this recap of Panama, Ryan. One thing just to close at the episode. What inspired you to choose Panama?
We wanted to go to the canal.
Yeah. Okay. So it was totally canal. You want to see this man-made wonder. Well, it sounds like it delivered.
It absolutely delivers. It's super cool. Well, until next time, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken.
I did my best Teddy Roosevelt. I had my little, my hat blew off it blew off on the boat in the Panama Canal. And I had to run and find it. And it was the most embarrassing thing. Everyone's like,
oh, I wish you'd fallen off the boat trying to get your Panama hat. That would have just been perfect.